Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I've got a new setup going on. Hopefully it's a little more enjoyable, it's more quiet, that's for sure. If you're just joining us, what we're doing here is I'm doing a read-along of a book of creation, a fantasy adventure by Gardner James Gardner Jr. We are going into chapter 11 here, so please, again, if you're just finding this video, go check out chapter 1, and then we'll see you when you get back to here. Recapping chapter 10, Talia went over what she just read as far as the creation myth carved on the wall of Heliodum with Mathis and Gannon, and they further went on to discuss bringing in Gannon's suit of armor into the whole mix. It's called Dark Star, and the problem was further exacerbated, big words, you know, by the fact that Dark Star and its power core have been separated, so they've got to go to two different locations in order to get things done. And they've only got 3 days to do it all. So Talia goes to use her powers, and all of a sudden, you know, instead of vanishing to go off on the adventure, she's back. And Gannon's there, and Darkstar's there, and both Talia and Gannon pass out, leaving Mathis to wonder what the fuck just happened. Pardon my French. Chapter 11, The Road to Argaria. The year is 1065 by the nocturnal calendar. Alpha. It's very important. Remember, Alpha. Mathis looked Talia over with a careful eye. Sure that she was only asleep and no longer in danger, Mathis moved on to Gannon, and he too seemed only to be asleep. His eyes shifted from the coiled serpent to a set of shiny black metal feet. With hesitation, he followed the object upward. He trembled as Darkstar towered over him. Far enough away from the beast, and certain that the two would be fine in his absence, Mathis made his way out of the chamber. He was off to find the old lodgings he had left behind. All in all, he had traveled 3 halls and climbed 2 flights of stairwells that ended with nowhere to go, except to turn around and head back down. There, a massive painting hung from ceiling to floor. As Mathis placed his hand on the frame, it swung on a center hinge to pivot. It opened to reveal a hidden nook. Mathis smiled to see all his things right where he had left them, though all covered in layers of seasonal dust. He used up a good amount of time going back and forth from the nook to the chamber, arranging things around Talia and Gannon to ensure their comfort. On his several trips, he looked again and again at the room of tree-carved pillars. Once things were done concerning the comfort of the group for the night, he focused all his attention on the pillared room. Circular in design and fashioned like a clock, the room sat wide and low. Numbers were represented by a mural of trees painted on the surrounding wall, a number of flowers placed around the roots of each tree to denote the hour. 12 gardens were depicted in all as the wall swept its way around. The hour and minute hands were 2 statues. One, a tall female that leaned to the right, held a mirror angled for her partner to look into. The other, a taller male that stood behind her, leaned out leftward and also held a mirror for his partner to gaze into. When the time reached 12 o'clock, the two belonged together. As time went by, the statues inched their way around the perimeter of the room, 2 people separated by time. Yet each time they met at a garden, Mathis would hear mechanical sounds from deep within the bowels of the complex, and a bell would ring throughout the temple. Their reunions were something to celebrate. However, when the time reached 7:10, there would be a higher set of chimes, and Mathis noticed that each statue could see their partner perfectly reflected in the mirror they held. When the time was right, they would see each other again. Between 4 and 6, behind a set of tapestries, sat the opening to the hall that led from the main gallery to the grand chamber. The tapestries held the place of the gardens, as no wall existed to hold the mural of any sort. Directly at 9 o'clock, and 10 feet from the wall, stood a raised circular altar of solid stone. Adorned with engraved flowers around the outside, the stonework altar had a flat surface for a top, and the surface had 12 deeply bored holes around the circumference. 2 of the holes had a golden flower extended upwards from them, placed at 6 and 9. A third flower, crystalline, had been placed at the 12th position. In the center of the room sat the carved pillars. There were 9 in all, set in a 3x3 grid, and all of them had their own characteristics, not the least of which were a number of flowers affixed to their roots. Mathis had noticed the flowers long ago, and he had linked them to the garden murals on the wall, the number of flowers being the number of the hour. Most of the flowers were carved of stone, except for 1 per tree, which was forged of a brilliant metal. On the floor, beneath the flowered roots of each tree, sat a tiled depiction of a planet with a decided emphasis on the polar region. Atop each pillar sat a large spherical red crystal, but just what all of that meant, Mathis had yet to puzzle out. Time for a break. He made his way to the others to rest for the night. But before doing so, he noticed something different about Ganon as he looked him over. The serpent's scaly hide had become a thickened and translucent layer. It shifted around with all kinds of colors in the light while Mathis walked around. He reached out to touch Ganon, but nothing felt different. Unsure what to make of it, he finally fully sat down to sleep. The year is still 1065 of the nocturnal calendar. Beta. Ganon quickly became disoriented as a quick succession of flashes, along with a jumbled change in his surroundings, threw him off guard. He and Talia skipped from the grand chamber to the main gallery, then to the well room below, finally down into the carved stairwell where Talia loosened her grip on the serpent, and everything came to a stop. He looked at the Azek in amazement, saw how much effort it had taken out of her, and he slipped around behind her to help hold her steady as she caught her breath. "Thank you," she huffed and leaned against Ganon's massive bulk. "I'll need a few minutes." "I do not suppose that you're willing to explain what just happened." "It's a long story," she replied. "One I'll be happy to tell you at some point, just not right now, because I was hoping that you would tell me about yourself, how you got here, and why you're chasing Azra, those things." "That too is a long story," he returned. "Though you are my daughter and it seems only right that you should know. But I am not sure it is a story that you will understand in its entirety, so I will tell it the only way I can." Chapter 12. Azra and the Great. The year is 4022 by the world's calendar. Quarantine of Gate 17 has failed. Darkstar sat hunkered down in the rubble of Grimoire systems as the place seemed to disintegrate around him. "Listen to me," Superior Giseldra spat. "Get your forces under control and corner him. Lexia will be there soon. Just keep Azra busy until then." "You do not seem to understand the situation," Darkstar replied while patching a security stream into the holocom for the Superiors to see. Azra, with his exotic weapon, tore the inside of Grimoire systems to pieces, and as he did so, his power only seemed to grow with each charge, discharge, and recharge of his weapon. He began to lift off the ground as wild lightning ripped through the air around him. Anything and everything started to break down in a flurry of sparks while drawn to the weapon around his arm. Ganon watched as Azra's ocular implants pulsed and strobed, while schematics from items of all sorts around the room were gathered and downloaded into his device. Using the materials collected while it sucked everything in, the weapon began to build on itself, and what was once just an exotic-looking bracelet now resembled a piece of power armor covering his hand, wrist, and forearm. But when the electric field collapsed, Azra fell to the floor, singed and sizzling, and met with a force of guards led by Ganon. All weapons went hot. The energy bolts and projectiles that flew his way disintegrated into mists that swirled around to meet the same fate as everything else, absorbed into the exotic weapon. "Lexia has arrived at Grimoire Systems," Giseldra hissed into Ganon's ear as the firefight blazed away. "ETA to target, 2 minutes. Relinquish command of your men to her and drop back to the gate room. Lexia will push him back to you. I'm sending the command codes to reopen Gate 17. The junction systems will not have changed since Azra's re-entry. We will be able to follow his path back to where he has been hiding. We're not losing him this time." The walls of the building finally began to give way as parts of the structure caved in to scream through the air and towards Azra. But when the blocks of cement neared him, the area around Azra's power arm pulsed and absorbed them with energetic waves. The absorbed materials continued to build up the armor, and now it covered most of his body. One member of the strike team dared to get close for a stabbing, but with a scream that startled the others, he was ripped in two. Then those two were ripped into 2 smaller pieces, and so on until he was no more than a stream of matter whipping around with the rest of the debris. "Once through," Giseldra continued, and Darkstar strained to hear over the torturous scream, "make sure he does not reseal the gate. Reinforcements will follow soon." A ray of light suddenly shone down from above as Lexia plowed through the ceiling to crash down atop Azra. A great and powerful spear pierced the ground, leaving a deflecting scar across the chest of Azra's completed armor. Doing as instructed, Darkstar stepped back and out of the fight to head back into the gate room. Finding Gate 17, Darkstar placed his passkey into the construct and entered the codes given to him by Giseldra. A plume of energy exploded as the gate flashed open, and Ganon entered Nocturne. With a squelch of steel against steel, Azra and Lexia tumbled through the gateway into Azra's underground stronghold, deep within the mountain of Sarda. Their fight held no bounds as they rumbled through the cavernous deep, extending powers beyond limits ever seen on the planet. Darkstar could do nothing to help in the fight. He even questioned why he was made to cross over. Lexia the Great needed no help when she was called into service, which was made clear when one of her blasts hit so powerfully hard that its shockwave sent Darkstar sailing up a long causeway to the surface. The side of the mountain exploded in a rage that shattered the world around. A column of ash and debris lifted into the sky and blotted out the sun for miles upon miles, blanketing the landscape in gray, silty soot. But their fight did not stop there. As the two continued to race around, a billowing cloud took to all the mountain. It flashed here and there in places as Azra and the Great battled. Balls of fire erupted that shook the planet and reduced more of the mountain to mere rubble. Darkstar had made it to safety and could only watch as the two fought each other. His heart sank to watch the gateway get destroyed in the process. Even though the gateway was destroyed, the Great had a new technology to use called Threshold. When Azra had been subdued, she used her own built-in gateway, technology with which Darkstar had failed to integrate. He rushed up as quickly as he could to get through the gate, but his fate was to remain on the planet. He roared in rage as the threshold closed long before he could reach it. Okay, we're going to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. That's 2 chapters. Hopefully this video didn't run too long. And yeah, again, really appreciate you guys hanging in there. Book of Creation by Gregory James Gardner Jr. Check it out on Amazon Books. Links in the description down below. If you haven't liked the video already, please do that. Philip DeFranco likes to threaten people, and that makes his likes go up. But I'm not a threatening kind of guy. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. 96% of my views come from people who aren't subscribed. Crazy. And I'm almost to 100 subscribers, so let's try and get that up. This might get a little dated once I get over 100 subscribers, but anyways, let's see if we can make it happen. Awesome. Thank you. Take it easy, guys.